All right. Well, welcome to this episode of We Rise Fighting. This is our first episode where we're just delivering some labor news and analysis to you. This is the usual crew of Rick,
Brian,
and Jerry.
All right.
Saying what's up to everyone, bringing you some news for this week. Just because we've gotten some pretty positive feedback on that, so decided to channel that, embrace that, put that out there. So here we go. All right, so first order of news, Denver Teachers Union, which is where I live. Denver Teachers Union and the Denver Public Schools District reached an agreement this week. They reached an agreement this week after 24 hours of negotiation. The agreement was made on September 1st, and whereas the union was demanding 12% cost of living increase, they got 6%. And from a $45,000 base pay for new members, they reached $50,000 now. So now any new member, any new teacher is going to start at $50,000 for a base salary for working at DPS. Okay, so now Brian, what do you got? What's going on in your world of labor?
All right. In the Midwest, we still have the United Auto Workers, Local 180 in Racine, Wisconsin, and their sister local in Burlington, Iowa, on strike against CNHI. They make agricultural equipment, tractors, etc. They've been out for this month. This week, it's been over 4 months now, and picket lines are still holding strong. A lot of community support coming in, but they could use a lot of support, as you all can imagine. Being on strike for over 4 months is quite a task. It's looking good on the picket lines, and support seems to be strong and momentum, but they had some negotiation sessions over the past couple weeks, but not much movement. So the locals are needing support. So if anybody can send gift cards, drop things off at the union halls, you can see the United Auto Workers Local 180 Facebook page for more information on how to donate. But you can just literally go to the union hall and drop supplies off if you're there in Racine or in Wisconsin. Also, solidarity resolutions from fellow locals are very important and appreciated, and any other assistance that can be helped. So they're still out, and we wish them well and send them greetings from We Rise Fighting. And Jerry's going to give us an update on the Starbucks workers are on the move nationwide. Tomorrow there's a big action called Sip In happening. Jerry from Boston, what's going on?
Well, tomorrow, Labor Day, Starbucks workers are organizing sit-ins at stores, mostly non-union stores, where we'll be going into. We supporters will be going into these Starbucks stores and sitting down and ordering a cup of coffee and just like sitting there for 2 hours and having a presence, letting the managers know that workers and community are down with the Starbucks rank and file, and showing some love and solidarity to the workers behind the counter. That's going on. And nationally, there is a national Adopt a Store campaign that's going on where local unions, central labor councils, and community solidarity groups are adopting a store, basically just to sort of like stand ready for when things get rougher, if they do, which they probably will, since Starbucks is reluctant to recognize any union in terms of contract negotiations. The workers are trying to, well, they put forth a master contract which they want Starbucks to agree to, and then have all the stores locally use it with a memorandum for local modifications if necessary. So, but again, Starbucks is digging in their heels, so it's going to be a struggle. Additionally, in Boston, 3,000 Boston University grad students dropped cards Friday with SEIU 509, and these grad workers are showing up on the Starbucks picket line on Commonwealth Avenue already, and this is in addition to the fact that there are like 4,000 Harvard graduate students that are about to adopt stores for Starbucks they're organized with UAW, and not to forget that MIT grad students won their union election 2 months ago. There's 4,000 of them, and they're going to get 3,000 more at the next organizing uh, part of their master campaign. So things are really popping in Boston, and whether or not and how much the just the graduate students in all these universities can unite with Starbucks workers in this region is something to really dream about, actually. Uh, and so that's what's going on here right now.
Cool. Right on. Also on my plate, I have labor notes reporting that railroad workers rejected contract negotiations, saying they're ready to strike. This is directly from labor notes. Railroad unions continue their slow creep along the path to a settlement or strike in contract negotiations covering 115,000 workers. On August 16th, the Presidential Emergency Board, convened by President Biden, issued its recommendations for a settlement. Many rail workers say they fall short and are prepared to strike to win more. The PEB recommended 22% raises over the course of a 5-year contract dating back to 2020, which would be the highest wage increases rail unions have seen in decades. But they are offset by increases in healthcare costs and come in the midst of high inflation. As I was mentioning before we jumped into the current events and we're just talking amongst ourselves. I see this as one of the trends happening right now in union negotiations, where workers are actually getting halfway decent wage increases, but those wage increases are offset by the rising cost of healthcare that employers want to transfer to unions. So wanted to put that out so I could mention that. The article continues to ask, so how do rail workers feel about the proposed deal? A survey by Railroad Workers United, a cross-union caucus of rank-and-file rail workers, indicated overwhelming opposition to unions signing agreements based on the PEB recommendations. The online survey, which was passed among all networks of railroad workers, got 3,162 responses. More than 9 in 10 respondents said they would vote down a tentative agreement based on the Presidential Emergency Board's recommendations. So far, it doesn't have much momentum, and it seems as though the rank and file is not biting. And just because our coverage is international, because the workers' struggle is international, I'm also going to mention about the UK and railroad workers there possibly going on strike September 15th and September 22nd. So, just before, again, we got on talking today, we were just chatting about that and just bouncing ideas back and forth. And Brian, I thought you had a great idea. I think it would be great if some railroad workers from the UK came to the US and lended their support and solidarity. And if some workers from the US went to the UK and supported and extended their solidarity and just came back with lessons learned, man. That sort of thing can really reinvigorate a struggle, especially a strike. When a worker goes to another land or another state or another city, where the same struggle, the same strike is on, and you come back with a story to tell and let people know that, other people across the globe are in the same struggle, that has a powerful effect. So, onwards with more news. Brian, what you got on your plate?
All right. So, yeah, I'd like to take off on that, Rick, what we've seen here in this country and the education struggle, is that's exactly what's happened. Educators all over the country sparked in 2012 with the Chicago teacher strike, and really before that in Wisconsin in 2011 with the Jim Crow Act 10, which was protested in the state capitol, but we lost that battle. But that inspired Chicago strike of 2012 of the teachers union there. And since then, there's been a rebuilding of education locals across the country, mostly around the banner, the schools our students deserve, because as we know, the right wing and the rich like to try to divide students from educators with all of their lies. So we saw, especially in West Virginia and Colorado and Arizona and Oakland and LA and many other places over the past 10 years or so, been a lot of really important education battles. And a couple of those have just happened in the past 2 weeks. One is the Columbus Education Association in Ohio. They won their struggle. It was the first strike since 1975. Over 4,000 educators with strong community support, including from students, made many gains. They included reduced class sizes, HVAC systems. And can you imagine that? Like going on strike in Ohio for air conditioning when the Pentagon budget is $850 billion and corporate welfare is in the billions. It's outrageous. So they won HVAC and air conditioning advancements, won first ever contractual limitations on outsourcing, salary increases, and first ever paid parental leave program for teachers. So that was in Columbus. They got a lot of support from their parent organization, the Ohio Education Association, and the NEA, which is their national affiliate. And there was thousands and thousands of people out in the streets every day during that strike, and they won. And way on the West Coast, the Kent Washington Education Association, which is affiliated with the NEA, is still on strike. Very similar to Columbus and many of the other struggles that are being waged by education unions. They're demanding more teachers and counselors, nurses, and other staff in our schools, as we've seen before the pandemic, but especially after the pandemic, which some argue are still in. Many students are reeling with all kinds of different issues, psychological issues, lack of food issues, those very, very life and death issues, very in a capitalist society such as the United States, which we think should be elementary, but are just basic demands that these educators are demanding in these strike struggles. So to make sure they're also demanding to make sure that no kids get overlooked, to make sure there are enough people to help students when they need it. And of course, they think and they're demanding that every child in their district gets everything that they need to be fully educated in their needs as well for social and emotional needs as well. So that's in Kent, Washington, and that's going on. So tomorrow's Labor Day, but they'll be on the picket lines Tuesday morning. They're going to negotiate over the weekend, and we'll see where it goes. And we wish them well, and again, lend them our solidarity, and we'll have more information on the Facebook page as that struggle unfolds. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, we'll have information on all these struggles on the Facebook page. Actually, the same articles that we work off of, we will be posting on the Facebook page. On a few of these instances, I was able to both read the article and also go to the union's website to check out, any press releases or communications they had with the members. So trying to bring you as well-rounded a story as possible. But, this is our first time doing these current events, and we're really excited about it. In future episodes, we plan on having interviews with workers, interviews with strikers. So please, keep checking in to We Rise Fighting here as we do our thing. So up next, also, part of one of the articles that really caught my attention, and I was telling the both of y'all this, before we started recording, is Teen Vogue. The comrades over at Teen Vogue, man. Here I am doing this labor podcast. I'm reading stuff from Labor Notes and Teen Vogue. Yo, Teen Vogue, you're doing it right, man. So Teen Vogue this time around, this is the UK office of the Teen Vogue, or arm of Teen Vogue, whatever the case may be. They have an article called "Hot Strike Summer," kind of a play on the hot girl summer thing. But they were just talking about how in the UK, 200,000 workers from vital sectors could go on strike throughout the course of the summer, or by the end of the summer. And since April, how all different types of industrial actions have been taking place across the UK, including, as I already mentioned, in the railroads, for buses, garbage collection, telecommunications, postal service, at the ports, and in criminal courts. Now, I encourage you to just check this article out. Again, this is the Hot Strike Summer article by Teen Vogue. Just because, as usual, so many things capture our imagination here. Here's another one. 200,000 workers going on strike in the UK is a big deal. And Brian, bring us back to the Midwest with some more labor news from there, please.
Okay, back in, I don't know if our listeners are familiar with Act 10 in Wisconsin, but this was essentially an act that was rammed through and signed in 2011. There was massive protests during that time against this. It overturned decades and decades of collective bargaining. So before the act, public sector workers could engage in collective bargaining in all kinds of different ways and bargain over all kinds of different issues. For example, teachers, class sizes, public sector workers about a variety of things. The Act 10, which is really rooted in Jim Crow, of course, overturned all of that. So today, that act stipulates that public sector workers in the state of Wisconsin can only bargain over wages up to the rate of inflation. So the UW health system, which was part of it was privatized uh, before back in the 90s, and the owners are saying that it's under the Act 10 law, and the SEI union says that's not true. That in fact they can collectively bargain legally with the UW Health Authority. So the nurses at the UW Health have been demanding recognition for almost 3 years. They've had a lot of community events. They've had a lot of their progressive politicians that they've elected and their friends in labor and elsewhere demand a simple recognition of their union so they can get the bargaining, a contract that the nurses deserve. And yet the hospital, UW Health, refuses to budge and refuses recognition. So on September 13th to the 16th, there's going to be a 3-day strike. And this is a huge sacrifice by these nurses. 3 days, they plan on striking for quality patient care, safe staffing, and of course, recognition of their union. So this is in Wisconsin, where there's been a lot of anti-labor attacks. So this is a huge, struggle that is being engaged in by the health nurses, and we want to just make sure we raised up there some support here for them, and that's going to kick off just in a few days. And tomorrow in Madison, they're going to have them as prominent speakers, the nurses leaders at the Labor Day there. It's a great act by the South Central Federation of Labor. Wonderful act of solidarity to do that, and we'll see where things play out. So the strike looks to begin on September 13th if the hospital doesn't recognize these nurses.
Right on.
And
Barry, what's up? What's going on?
Brian is often reminding us of the importance of taking an internationalist view towards labor around the globe. And a couple of things happened recently that are of note and kind of somewhat mysterious. About a week or 10 days ago, the Solidarity Center, which is the international arm of the AFL-CIO, came out with a statement, press release of sorts, really attacking Zelensky from Ukraine for Zelensky's union busting that's actually going on in Ukraine. He's severely limiting labor rights and initiating government policies to make that a surety. And to have an arm of the AFL-CIO criticize Zelensky is kind of a mysterious, because the AFL-CIO is all in with President Biden in pushing that war to its whatever limits, if it has any, will happen. And so it is important when trying to understand what's going on with this with the Solidarity Center and the AFL-CIO, is to remember that the Solidarity Center now is sort of the heir of the American Institute for Free Labor Development, which under George Meany and Lane Kirkland in the 50s and 60s was the warmongering arm of the AFL-CIO.
Many of us CIA.
AFL-CIA,
yeah,
which had a hand in the deposing of Salvador Allende and supporting the Central American wars promulgated under Ronald Reagan to undermine indigenous and authentic labor unions in El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua, and which was responsible for the slaughter of many campesinos, certainly in all of those countries. When John Sweeney succeeded Lane Kirkland in 1995, he dismantled AFL, but has sort of come back a little bit. It's unclear as to exactly where the Solidarity Center now, as the son of AFL, stands on these issues. More analysis has to be brought into the picture, but just for those of us who are sort of, I don't know, confused, bemused, or skeptical of this statement criticizing Zelensky coming out of the AFL-CIO, it's important to understand the history here to see, as we're trying to read the tea leaves. I mean, there are different analyses going on around the country as to what the hell is going on with the Solidarity Center now. But it's just something to think about because AFL-CIO plays global politics. And what they're doing globally is important for us here locally.
Right on. Moving along over here, some more news coming from Kansas City. Taco Bell workers in Kansas City went on strike over pay and working conditions. This past Thursday at about 12:30 p.m., about upwards of 100 people in the parking lot chanted, "Come on, get out. We've got your back," to the employees who were going on strike. One of the employees, according to an article from kansascity.com, one of the employees locked the doors to the location and hung a sign in the window that read, "Closed due to strike. We need a living wage, respect, safe working conditions, and a union."
Right
You know, and there's a reason I wanted to highlight that struggle in particular, because here as socialists, we talk about building a new world from the shell of the old, and this is the type of article where you have to consider the value of these workers' wages. they're they're flipping burgers. They're making whatever the case may be. They're offering some sort of nutrition to the community, and that's worth more than the value of the labor of any CEO. They're actually feeding people. So, solidarity to those Taco Bell workers strike in Kansas City. Thank you for doing that. That's been, a little glimpse of hope for us over here at We Rise Fighting. So solidarity to you out there. And then the final bit of news on my end will be to mention that the Kaiser mental health clinicians enter the third week of strike on what I believe is the West Coast. Thousands of Kaiser permanent and mental health care workers are entering their third week of an open-ended statewide strike, asking for better working conditions and shorter wait times for patients seeking care. More than 2,000 therapists, psychologists, counselors, and social workers being represented by the National Union of Healthcare Workers have participated in the strike at daily picketing rallies outside of Kaiser Permanente locations and government buildings across the state. So solidarity, to those workers. Solidarity to all workers on strike. We will continue to bring you labor news and analysis in the weeks to come. We are very excited about this. If by any chance you are any of the workers who are on strike and you would like to jump on the podcast, please get in touch with us. We will also be trying to get in touch with some of y'all just so we can have that first person perspective so you can educate us and our listeners as to what's going on in the struggle.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rick. I just have a couple more items before we close. One is an important development, and the reason this is happening is because there's been a lot of activity, a lot of organizing, a lot of eyes on this. The National Labor Relations Board hearing officer formally recommended that Amazon Labor be certified as the bargaining representative for JFK8 workers on Long Island. And some of you remember that brother Chris Smalls and his friends there, fellow workers, he was fired, but he kept on organizing. And so that's a big development, and that happened on September 2nd, despite attacks on the Amazon labor union leaders. And then it just recently happened. Police were threatening Chris Smalls' arrest on September 2nd in Albany while he was trying to organize his fellow workers there. He wasn't arrested, but despite that, they continue to organize, and they are gaining a lot more wider community support, and not only in New York State, but also across the country and internationally. Lastly, I would just like to raise up that the Southern Workers Assembly has or will start their fall 2002 webinar classes. And this is going to be from September 5th to October 31st. and this is Southern Workers Power Program webinar series, and this is a completely independent initiative by the SWA, and they're going to call this the Communiversity, an educational partner with the Black Workers for Justice, and they're going to explore and discuss the 9 points of the Southern Workers Power Program. And so it begins tomorrow on Labor Day at 7 o'clock Eastern, and it will continue every following Monday until the 31st of October. And more information can be gotten at southernworker.org. So that's southernworker.org, and that's going to be a very unique program led by Black workers in the South and other oppressed workers, women, LGBTQ workers, and of course, poor white workers as well. It's going to be very diverse. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that as well. Thank you.
And I just want to add that 10 years ago, Brian and I had the opportunity to spend some time in Charlotte and volunteer with local 150 UE, the public sector statewide unit down there in North Carolina, passing out flyers and talking to workers. And that is no joke. The South is very important. It's critically important to the labor movement in the United States because it's the weakest part of the country with right to work laws and white supremacy going on. Unfortunately, in far too many places in the South, not everywhere in the South, but far too many. And so Southern Workers Assembly is a coming together of progressive unions in the South to do good work. I think UE has a big footprint in that Southern Workers Assembly also, and it's a really good thing. And keep your eye on it.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you, comrades. That's the news that we have for this episode of We Rise Fighting. Happy labor to all. Until it's International Workers' Day every day. We will be back at you with the next episode. We will be bringing you interviews. We will be bringing you more current events and other labor-themed episodes. Until then, everyone, have a good one. Solidarity to all.
All right. Solidarity for everyone.